This is Sunday School Lesson for September the 20th, 2020. The title of this lesson is called Victorious Love. The scripture text for this lesson is Genesis 42, verses 6 through 25. Background read is Psalms 51 and the whole chapter of Genesis 42. Beginning with Genesis 42, verse 6.
Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of selling grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where are you from?" he demanded. "From the land of Canaan," they replied. "We have come to buy food."
Joseph could have revealed his identity to his brothers at once, but Joseph's last memory of them may well have been staring in horror at their faces as slave traders carried him away. Were his brothers still evil and treacherous, or had they changed over the years? Joseph decided to put them through a few tests to find out. Continuing with verse 8.
Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him, and he remembered the dreams he'd had about them many years before. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become." "No, my lord," they exclaimed, "your servants have simply come to buy food. We are all brothers, members of the same family. We are honest men, sir. We are not spies." "Yes, you are," Joseph insisted. "You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become." "Sir," they said, "there are actually 12 of us. We, your servants, are all brothers, sons of a man living in the land of Canaan. Our youngest brother is back there with our father right now, and one of our brothers is no longer with us."
Joseph remembered his dream about his brothers bowing down to him. Chapter 37, verse 6 through 9. Those dreams were coming true. As a young boy, Joseph had been boastful about his dreams. As a man, he no longer flaunted his superior status. He did not feel the need to say, "I told you so." It was not yet time to reveal his identity, so he kept quiet. Sometimes it is best to remain quiet even when we would like to have the last word. Continuing with verse 14.
But Joseph insisted. "As I said, you are spies. This is how I will test your story. I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you will never leave Egypt unless your youngest brother comes here."
Joseph was testing his brothers to make sure they had not been as cruel to Benjamin as they had been to him. Benjamin was his only full brother, and he wanted to see him face to face. Continuing with verse 16.
"One of you must go and get your brother. I'll keep the rest of you here in prison. Then we'll find out whether or not your story is true. By the life of Pharaoh, if it turns out that you don't have a younger brother, then I'll know you are spies." So Joseph put them all in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "I am a God-fearing man. If you do as I say, you will live. If you really are honest men, choose one of your brothers to remain in prison. The rest of you may go home with grain for your starving families, but you must bring your youngest brother back to me. This will prove that you are telling the truth, and you will not die." To this they agreed. Speaking among themselves, they said, "Clearly we are being punished because of what we did to Joseph long ago. We saw his anguish when he pleaded for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why we're in this trouble." "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy?" Reuben asked. "But you wouldn't listen, and now we have to answer for his blood." Of course, they didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he had been speaking to them through an interpreter. Now he turned away from them and began to weep. When he regained his composure, he spoke to them again. Then he chose Simeon from among them and had him tied up right before their eyes. Joseph then ordered his servants to fill the men's sacks with grain, but he also gave secret instructions to return each brother's payment at the top of his sack. He also gave them supplies for their journey home.
Reuben couldn't resist saying, "I told you so." He thought they were being punished by God for what they had done to Joseph. Apparently, the intervening years had not lessened their guilt. Selling Joseph into slavery amounted to death in their minds, for they surely never expected to see him again. Though the biblical account does not mention Joseph's anguish at the time, Genesis 37:26-28, we are unsurprised to learn that Joseph's suffering was evident to his brothers. So intense was their hatred and contempt that Joseph's cries for mercy went willfully unheard. Yet those cries echoed back to them in this moment, confirming their guilt and heralding that punishment that was finally at hand for their crime, or so they believed. It is striking that these 10 men were blaming themselves for the death of a man who was standing before them. The brothers believed that when one encountered distress or troubles, it was a punishment for some previous wrongdoing. That thinking is reflected throughout the Bible. Example, Job 11, verses 13-18, John 9, verses 1-2. We may still feel that our struggles are God's judgment on us for our past sins, but like the brothers, we see only part of each story and should be wary of interpreting too confidently God's intentions in any situation. Ironically, this trouble has visited them because of Joseph, not as a punishment, but because God had worked through their sin to save them. Genesis 45:5 and verses 7-8. Though the brothers believe God is punishing them, in fact, he is about to deliver their whole family from famine. Reuben is Jacob's firstborn. Before this moment, Joseph knew nothing of what Reuben had said in his defense. Reuben's statement that Joseph's blood is required confirmed that he believed Joseph had died and that he considered all of the brothers present to be guilty of that death. Because of Joseph's cunning use of an interpreter, the brothers had been speaking frankly before him without realizing he could understand their private conversations. For long years, he must have wondered whether they felt any guilt or remorse for their actions against him. Though he had clearly found great purpose in his Egyptian life, part of Joseph wanted to know if his brothers had ever overcame their hatred of him. Joseph was not prepared for what he heard. The brothers' words of remorse, coupled with Reuben's personal expression of regret, proved more than Joseph could handle. Before sending his brothers back to Canaan, Joseph took certain calculated steps. Because it was within his authority to set prices for corn, Joseph decided to send the food back with his brothers at no charge. But he refunded their money without telling them. This strategy served Joseph in at least 2 ways. First, he blessed his brothers by not accepting their payment, thus allowing that money to be used for other purposes as necessary. Second, by not telling them what he would do, Joseph's actions made them fear God. Genesis 42:28. Would the governor see them as thieves as well as spies? Was this finally God's plan to punish them for Joseph's death? How much worse could things get? Joseph had settled into the life of Egypt, secure in his powerful position. He had married and started a family. He had taken over the responsibility of providing grain for those who have traveled from near and far to Egypt because of the severe famine that had ravaged many countries. It was business as usual for Joseph until he looked up and saw a group of 10 men dressed like he used to be when he lived in Canaan. And then he realized these were his brothers. They too had come to Egypt to buy grain. Joseph's motives for acting as he did towards his brothers were not rooted in selfishness or vindictiveness. You could tell by his tears. He could not control his emotions when he learned that Reuben had actually intended to spare his life. Though the brothers did not know it, the governor of Egypt was already planning how to see his father again and to keep his whole family safe. While Joseph was hiding his true identity from his brothers, his declaration that "I fear God" was the truth. The brothers did not realize what a comfort that declaration should have been to them. Joseph's tears revealed his heart for all time. Don't forget to comment, share, rate, and subscribe, and have a good day.